Mhm. Okay, and we are live. So welcome everybody. My name is David Fedewa. I help coach and teach inventors how to license their own products. And let me stop sharing so you can hopefully see my face. Yes, my name is David Fedewa. I help coach, teach inventors how to license their own products. And I appreciate everybody being here, spend some time with us, hopefully getting your questions answered, because my biggest goal is to help inventors get their products licensed and help them through the process. I am an inventor myself. I started out on my journey trying to invent products in 2008, 2009-ish is when I started. And from there, I've licensed 5 of my own products. I've coached over 170 inventors to license their own. And so I'm here to answer your questions. I've been through a lot of contracts, a lot of negotiations, all 5 steps of getting your product licensed. So do and ask your questions. I always consider there's kind of 2 parts of licensing. Part of it's head and heart, and the other is nuts and bolts. And so there is emotional and execution component, and then it's what to do. And so if you have questions in either category, what is it to do, or, I'm getting stuck here, what's going on? Usually there's an explanation, or at least somebody's been through that before and I've seen it. And so if it's a nuts and bolts question of like, what do I do through these steps, or how does this work? I'm here to help. And then also in head and heart, I see a lot of people get emotionally stalled out, or don't have the motivation, or a lot of different things. And a lot of the time it comes down to certainty and focus and a couple other things, and just having a limiting belief surrounding an aspect of your journey can kind of stall you out. And so I'm here to help. So do ask any questions you have. And to that, if you do have questions, type them into the chat box. We have a live group that we're doing here on Zoom that is asking a lot of the questions. We also are sending this out onto a couple different platforms, LinkedIn, YouTube, and I think Facebook Live. And so if you have any questions there, also type in below any questions that you do have. We'll try to answer them live while we're in the Zoom room. So I wanted to start out. Bobby had asked a question, and Bobby, I read through your request. It looks like you were launching a product. I didn't really see any questions or anything there. If you wanted to solidify or give me a specific question on how I could help you. I see you have the Car Buddy product. He's on rangeme.com or range.me. And it's called the Car Buddy. And Bobby is saying hi from NC. So hello, welcome to the Q&A. And so let me know if you do have any questions that I can help you out with. Joel also says hello from Iowa Falls, the scenic city. So hello. People are saying hi from everywhere. Joe Downey from CA, California. And Joe had a question: how do you get monthly royalties? And Joe, I'm going to ask you a little bit of a follow-up question. So do type in, are you talking like, how do I negotiate the deal so that it is monthly? Or how do I get kind of like periodic royalties on an invention? Because that is kind of a 2 different questions. And I can start out with the second one, how do you get royalties? And then I can get into how to get them to be monthly. Hi, Juanita from Minnesota. And by the way, I'm in Michigan. If those didn't know, that's where I come from. It's born and raised. And Joe said, can you explain both? Of course I can. So to get to royalties in general, royalties in general are, it is a difficult mountain to climb. And one of the first things I tell inventors is, when I got started, and all of this it stems from not only my own personal experience, but it stems from coaching and helping people through this process. And so as I was going through this process myself, my eyes were at the prize. They were at the top of the mountain. And maybe 2.5 years into the journey of trying to get my products licensed, I realized that my perspective, or my focus, I should say, my focus was at the top of the mountain. And so, Joe, with your question, how do you get to royalties? Well, my eyes were always in that same spot, right? How do I get to royalties? How do I get my product license? How do I get those royalty streams started? And in doing that, I was never focusing on the day-to-day actions it took to get to that point. Because if you do the day-to-day actions that are necessary, then a royalty agreement becomes inevitable. And that's where, with my coaching and teaching program, I get all my inventors to take their focus, because all of us do. I will say that 100%, we all focus on getting our product licensed and making royalties. But this is where, my group of inventors differentiate and they get their deals, is because I say, let's focus on the day-to-day actions that are necessary to get you in a position where deals just start to happen. And so when I was going through my journey, I started focusing on, all right, what am I doing today that's moving me closer? And it was things like, all right, I needed to improve my ability to research. Because if you also take the process, right, the 5 steps of licensing your product, and you break it apart into skills, and that's right, that's a perspective shift, because everybody's like, how do I get my product license? Well, it takes a conglomeration, or just like a group of skills put together in one individual, so that they have the ability to get into a position where they can license their products. And when you start to look at it that way, they're like, well, all right, so what skills do I need? 1, research, right? You need to know and learn how to research appropriately. Everybody's like, oh, I know how to research. Well, yeah, you know how to Google search, but you don't necessarily know how to search for potential licensing partners. You don't know how to search to understand how to differentiate your product in the marketplace. What is your competitive advantage over other products? Those type of things. So when you're developing, your first skill is research. And so once you know how to do that, and you know how to develop a list of 15 to 20, maybe 25 potential licensees. All right, now I've gotten better at that skill, but I've accomplished the goal there. And then you move to step number 2, which is developing marketing material. The marketing material is an emotional impact. And I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. Let me get a little sip. Is that marketing material is a very emotional thing. And this is the way that I view it. And I feel like it's very different than a lot of people. They just think, marketing material, just tell them what it is and use benefits, not features. But I look at it and say, you as an inventor, you had an emotional experience, right? And that emotional experience, you think about it, right? It keeps you up at night, or makes you wake up in the middle of the night. You start to do things differently in your life that start to get you to take action, right? Because you have all this emotion, and the emotion starts to boil up inside you, and you start to do things in the real world, not just in your mind, but you start to read books, you start to show up at webinars to get your questions answered, things like that. You start to do things, right? So emotions boil up into real world action. And so that emotion inside you started as this little nugget, this little apple seed. And so all marketing material does is just package up that emotion into a nice little deliverable and show somebody else. Because when they see it, they have that same emotional seed that gets planted in them. And they're like, wow, this thing is cool. And that emotion just immediately grows out of them, and they start taking action, right? They, as a potential licensee, start to get manufacturing quotes, or they start to show potential buyers, or they get their team involved, right? They get up from their desk and go do something because they had an emotional experience. And that's all you're looking to do with your marketing material. So that's step number 2, is develop emotional marketing material that impact people on that level, so that they start to take action in the real world. And when you start to view marketing material in that way, your marketing material becomes impactful. And that's what we're looking to do, is have impactful marketing material. Once you have that in step number 2, step number 3, and everybody thinks this is step number 1, but it's never step number 1, step number 3. And this is like baking a cake. If in a cake, you take all the ingredients and you put them in the oven and heat them up, and then take them out and mix them up, Is that going to make you a cake? It is not. And so in this instance, licensing a product is the same thing. You can try doing these things out of order, but usually you don't end up with the same results. And so I say this next step, protection, is step number 3, is protecting your product. Provisional patent application, filing utility patent, whatever it is that gets you to feel comfortable and confident moving forward with your product is the thing that you need to do. Most of the time, 99% of the time, I'm using provisional patent application, PPA. In short, the USPTO created this so individual inventors can pitch their products under a patent pending status and test out the marketplace. That's all. So use what resources the USPTO has given us. Thank you, USPTO. So now, right, research, market, protect. Now we're on to phase number 4, or step 4, and that is selling or pitching your product to the marketplace. Not gonna lie, everybody doesn't like this sales job, but and I don't want to sugarcoat it. It is. I mean, there's an aspect of it that you're like calling, but you're not salesy like some person that's calling you right during dinner because you're home and wants to talk to you about your magazine subscriptions. It's not like that. It's you're calling them during business hours to offer them a business opportunity. And let me tell you this. I've seen my royalty checks. You can make companies millions of dollars. So when you're calling them up, you're bringing them an opportunity. And so don't look at this as like a sales pitch where you're like trying to convince them to do something they don't want to do. When they see your product, they're going to be excited about it. If it's a good product, obviously, and it can make them millions of dollars. So you have to do this part. This is the phase in which it separates the pack. I tell all of the inventors inside the tribe, it separates the pack. The ones that do this step well are the ones that successfully license products. The ones that do this one terribly do not. And to get even more definitive, like I've had inventors with amazing products do step number 4 terribly and don't get anywhere. And the flip side of it, people with mediocre products do step number 4, pitching and selling, very well, and they license products. So this literally differentiates the pack of those that have and those that don't. So if you have to get good at any of these, step number 4 is the one. So once you do that well, you get in. So to look at these and divide this back up into skill sets. 1, you get good at research. 2, you get good at building marketing material. 3, you get good at writing and filing your own PPAs. And then 4, you get good at pitching. Once you conglomerate all of those skills together, then you get to the point where you're like, all right, I'm pitching good products to the right companies in the right way with the proper protection. Now they're like, yes, Inventor Dave, we'd love to license your product. And that's what gets you to step number 5, which is negotiating and closing a deal. Negotiating and closing a deal is nothing like Shark Tank. Like everybody has this perception of like high pressure, right? Trading numbers. I'll take this. No. The way that it usually goes is, and I'll tell you exactly how my negotiations go. I'll ask them, I'll say, what do you think about doing 7%? Does that work for you? And they're like, well, we'll run it by the team and get back to you. Okay. Next topic. And then you kind of go through the whole process. And like, it's not like there's any type of pressure. It's very open conversation. They say what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And then you come to a conclusion that works for both parties and you capture it into a contract and boom, there you go. You've got a contract that works for both parties. Everybody signs. And then you work on getting the product on the shelf. And so Joe in long, I guess I can't say in short, that is because it was, 15, I guess that's in short, 15 minutes of how to license a product and how to get it to a monthly royalty status is in the negotiation. I have one of my products. It's actually kind of funny. Like I signed a licensing agreement that was quarterly and they pay me monthly. But it really depends on the company's accounting. Reason being is that in their accounting, they maybe they do things quarterly. Maybe they don't pay vendors monthly. They pay, you know what I mean? Like, so they're not going to break their accounting system just so you can get your monthly checks. They don't like to work like that. And so I do have monthly checks, but it's because that's just how they do billings. And so you have to talk to them. There is some flexibility in it. Obviously, we like to get paid more periodically instead of like lump sums yearly, even though those are nice. I have one that does that. Because then it's like a big year-end bonus, or I guess a year beginning, because it usually comes 30 days after year-end. But it's you have to ask. So you ask the question, would it be appropriate to get monthly checks? And a lot of the companies, they pay out, it's monthly billing cycles. So like they pay out on the 10th of the month. So if they pay out on 10th of the month, then, you know, they look at, because this is how it works. They take a SKU, which is SKU. It's a unit number of how they tag your product. So like, this is one of my products. It's got a SKU number on the bottom. And so then they attach this SKU to an account. So every one that sells, it basically tallies inside my account. And at the end of the month, they say, all right, there's X amount of tallies or X amount of units sold. And then they cut me a check for that. And so that's kind of how you get it in, is you ask for it. And then you ask them with an open-ended question, like, how can we make this work? And if they say, really, we can't, we need to do quarterly, then, you know, I'm good with quarterly versus monthly checks, just as long as the checks are written out to me. So Joe, I hope that answers your question. If you have follow-up, do ask them. And Joe also said, and two, how do you feel? Doing better now, I hope. Yes. Reason Joe's asking that was I missed the last Q&A. I was not feeling well, but back on my feet, crushing it, hopefully closing another deal here very soon. So, so Bobby said, do you offer license representation for clients? So Bobby, yes, I do. I do represent and partner with inventors on projects and work with them on getting their project licensed. It's essentially kind of like a bit of an application process because I don't work with everybody. It's a product basis, category basis, things like that. So if you are interested, do reach out to me, david@inventtribe.com, and we can talk more. I've got more questions over here. Michelle. Got a whole list of them. Thank you. Let's get into this. Let's see, I'm getting excited. I got some questions here. Michelle, thank you so much. How do you research for potential investors and or companies who are willing to look at your marketing material? So investors, I never look at investors. I just made a YouTube video on this because it's funny. I get a ton of people reaching out to me saying, I need investment money. And I'm like, I don't know why. Like, I don't know what investment money would do. And reason being is I've never gotten investment money. I don't know what it's for. And I guess part of that stems from where I came from, because when I got started in inventing, I was a dishwasher at a restaurant, so I was not making much money. And so, and I moved up to busser, I moved up to waiter, and but in that journey, you know, even as a waiter, that was like the highest point in which I was getting paid at a day job at that point. And so I needed to figure out a way to get my products in front of potential licensees with very little money. And so like my path to market, usually me and my students can get a product in front of a potential licensee for less than $100. And so when people say I need investors, I am like, I don't know what you need investors for if you're looking to license the product. And so I guess I would take that and take out the word investors, because you need about $100 to get your product into a potential licensee. If you don't have $100, then remember, inventing is not a get rich quick scheme. This is a long-term play. You don't get paid for 18 to 24 months after you get started, sometimes longer. And so if you don't have $100, you need to go start making $100 before you get into inventing, and have some financial stability before you try to pursue these things because there are long-term payouts. But how do you search for potential companies who are willing to look at your marketing material? That is a good question, because it's not as straightforward. There's 3 layers, and these layers over the years have kind of merged together. They're starting to look different with the pandemic. I mean, even before that, it was starting to look different. But I'll say top layer. I'm trying to like square it up on my screen so everybody can see it. Top layer is retailers: Home Depot, Lowe's, Bed Bath & Beyond, Walmart, Target. All these are the stores that you walk into, even online retailers, stores that you purchase product from. These are not good potential licensees. Everybody wants to license to them. You don't, that's not a very good licensee. Then when you step down from this layer to here, middle layer, these are distributors and brands. So distributors and brands are companies that are selling product into them. So like the Hillman Group is a great example. They sell product into Home Depot, Lowe's, and Menards and Walmart. They're products that they make attachment products. And so they're a mid-level company that they don't own retail, but they own distribution and products, and they then put them into the retail space. These are the best companies to license with, this middle band, distributors and brands. So what you do is you go into the store where you think your product is being sold. So you got a hammer, go to Home Depot, look at the hammers, take a picture of the hammers, flip over every single hammer and figure out who makes that hammer. Stanley, Craftsman, Husky, those are all companies that you'd be potentially licensing with. If you have a spatula or barbecue tongs, you're looking at OXO, Norpro, Chefin. You would go to Walmart and you'd take a picture of that aisle, and that's all the companies that would be in there. And so those are the companies that you're looking to partner with, right? So I said step number 1, we're figuring out a competitive advantage in building a list of potential partners. Those are potential licensees. And that is that middle band of companies. I'm going to talk about the third band, which is the manufacturers. All 3 of these are starting to merge in some places, right? Some retailers have direct to manufacture. So they manufacture the product and sell it direct in. They're skipping that middle band. But the manufacturer, you can license products to manufacture. It's less common. It's not done as much. But, and also royalty structure is very different on every level. So royalty structure on the top level on retail is your royalty percentage is coming off of sales at the retail level, because that's where it happens, or the deal is negotiated a little bit differently. And then the middle band, it's coming off of typically a wholesale price. The bottom is coming off manufacturing costs. So like if you have a $20 product here, 5% of $20 is $5 to $1. The same product sold here is at off of $10. So you're getting 5% of $10, 50 cents. Well, that same $10 product is $4 here. So your 5% is now 20 cents. But the volume is different, because retailers, and I had one student that was kind of a little bit shocked by this. They had licensed to a retailer, but when you're with one retailer, and let's say they sell in 900 stores, that's all the distribution points you're getting. But so you have, let's say, 900 distribution points at one retailer, but you're getting $1 per unit. Woohoo. But then you step down to brands. Well, brands, they sell to Bed Bath & Beyond and Walmart's, right? They went from 900 to 5,900 stores. So even though you're cutting the royalty in half, you're 5xing the amount of stores that you get into. So it equals more money. So you have 50 cents a unit and you have more distribution. And then you step down to the lowest band, right? 5% of $4 is 20 cents a unit. So you're going from $1 to 50 cents to 20 cents. And the bottom manufacturer, depending on who they're connected with, because this manufacturer might sell to multiple brands, and those multiple brands might go into multiple retail locations, increasing your volume considerably. But depends on who your manufacturer is connected with, is how that kind of like upside down tree, or that tree of royalties works. So I hope that answers your question and gives you some direction. Next question. A little parched. Juanita asked, what if there are no products like yours, even though it's actually an existing popular product improvement? Juanita, you might need to specify a little bit more on this. What if there are no products like yours, even though it's actually an existing popular product? So let me answer two different questions there if you want to clarify a little bit, because by saying there's no other products like it, but there's an existing product, popular product improvement. So if there's nothing like it, when inventors come to me, and I try to scare them a little bit, when they say, oh my gosh, there's nothing like it, I'm like, then run, drop the project, get rid of it. And I say that half joking, but at the same time, there's some sense to that, because if there's absolutely nothing like it, then you want to not do it, because nobody's spending any money on it, and a company looking at it as a potential product, they don't want to spend any money on it either. And so you want to get away from it. But if it's an improvement on an existing product, then that is an improvement on an existing product. There are things like it, right? There's other products that are accomplishing the similar goal. See this product right here? This is a beer pitcher that doesn't foam. There's absolutely nothing like it. But there was, right? There was beer pitchers. There were other contraption and devices to lower the foam production in beer and beer pouring. And so even though this product was new and revolutionary, right? In a sense, it wasn't really, but there was nothing like it. And that's what invention is, right? There's nothing like it, but you have to look at the rest of the market. Are you selling something that they are selling other products that prove this distribution? I see. Juanita said they're a different distribution or application. Okay, so you want to look at, when you say there's no products like it, look if there's anything else solving the same problem. Because when you look out there and say, all right, people are trying to flip their burgers over, so they made these products and people are spending money on how to flip their burgers over. Spatula. But if there's like, I'm trying to think of something silly and crazy. Like if you have a new innovative way to cut your lawn by hand, like with scissors, nobody's spending any money on how to cut your lawn by hand. And so even though it might be a better way to do it, it doesn't necessarily mean that people are spending money on it. And so if you're looking at the product and it's like, yeah, there's no products like it, but there's other products solving the same problem. So like if you have a new way to clip nails, well, they're already clipping nails out there. And that's why I say, like, when people say there's no products like it, you have to be specific on how you say that. And don't tell companies that. Like, they're like, all right, then we don't want to touch it. So that's where I'm always very careful on when people say no products like it, stop using that language. Companies don't like it. And you need to show them how it's better than what exists in the marketplace. And that's really what you're looking to do. So other product, different application, depends on how far you're jumping away. Like if you're jumping from like flossing teeth to brushing teeth, same category, you probably won't get a licensing deal. But if you're jumping from like flossing teeth to like HVAC supply, when I say HVAC, it's heating and cooling supply, and then you might be able to get paid on that. So I hope that helps. And do let me know if you have follow-up comments on that, Juanita. Oh, great advice. Thank you. Okay. Connor, thank you. Thank you for coming out. Do you have any tips for the negotiation process? And could you perhaps give an example of common changes that you may want to make to the agreement? Funny thing. So Connor, inside the Invent Tribe membership, I started, and I did a webinar on this in October. And well, no. It was 3 weeks ago. And I did one webinar on it, and we got to the end and literally only covered like 2 topics, because each topic is so defined and there's so much information and it's so nuanced that like I put all the information on slides and thought it was going to be one webinar. It actually didn't split once. it went into 2 webinars, and then the second webinar went into a 3rd webinar, because there's so much that goes into the negotiation process and understanding the nuances and deal structure. And the reason I'm telling you this is that, like, when you get into negotiation, and I'll give you some quick tips and tricks on kind of improving the process or improving your position in negotiating, is that negotiation is situational. So, like, and the way that I'll give you some of the webinar that I gave, is like, you can't do any of the tips and tricks that I say unless you do certain things at the beginning. And the reason I say that is like, Connor, you in your life, you have specific rules that you've set up with people in your life, and people, it's absolutely almost subconscious unless you learned about it and understood it. But like, you have rules with people in your life that you don't even know about. And the way to the most apparent, the most black and white way to define that is your speech patterns. So like, if you've got your drinking buddies, your coworkers, your spouse, your kids, you have different speech patterns with each one. And so if you took like your college drinking buddies, the language that you use with them, and you took it into the office and you started speaking like that with them, everybody would be like, oh, like, you're breaking the rules of how we communicate, right? And that's the most apparent example of relationship rules. And so if you understand that, rules are always set at the beginning of a relationship. And so I tell people, like, your negotiation process starts at the relationship, because you're setting those rules. Because I tell people, like, all right, when you're starting to negotiate a higher royalty rate, you do this, this, and this. But you can only do this, this, and this if you set up your relationship rules at the very beginning. Because I get people that show up at my door and they say, I'm in negotiation. All right, now can you help me? And I'm like, all right, has this and this and this happened? They're like, yep. I'm like, can't help you. You've already, like, those things are already set, because you cannot undo your rules in your relationship. Yeah, we might need to be able to budget a little bit, but you can't instantly restructure relationship rules, especially in business, in a phone call, right? Because if you set yourself up as the yes man, right? They ask you for your prototype. Yes. They ask you for your patent. Yes. They ask you for this. They ask you for that. And you just say, yes, 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 yes. Well, and they say, Connor, the royalty rate is 4%. And then they just move on to the next topic. You're not going to negotiate, because you're the yes man. You've already structured your relationship. And then you say, no, I don't take 4%. Then you're breaking social norm with them, right? That's like you taking the language that you use with your college drinking buddies into the office with people that have never heard you speak that way, right? You're breaking all those rules. So if from the beginning you structure your relationship so that you're the person that will be able to negotiate, and what those things are is, you're not a yes person. You're a, yes, I can work with you, but I need reciprocation in our relationship. And that's why this whole topic split into 3 webinars, because, all right, now you're talking about reciprocation in relationship. You have to balance a relationship where if you have 2 partners in a relationship and one person always just says yes, 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 right? You're just pushing one person over. And so both parties don't like it, because then there's no give and take, right? There's no balance. And that's just human nature. And so when you start to push back as an inventor and say, yeah, I'd love to send you my prototype, but I'd like to understand how we're going to work together in terms of a deal. They're like, oh, wow, this one is not like all the other inventors. We don't just tell them what to do, and we're going to have to work with this person. They're intelligent. They're a business person. They understand what they're doing. And so once you start to structure your appropriate relationship, you structure that you're not a yes person, you have a balanced relationship, right? You have reciprocation in terms of respect, and you're not just a pushover, then it's okay to start using these negotiation tactics to improve your deal position and get more of what you want. And so some of those things are like, and I always refer to good storytelling and good questions are what make good negotiators. So if you tell a story and the end of the story concludes with you and them understanding that this is the best outcome, then you get that outcome. And my best example of that is in my first couple of deals, I didn't know how to get minimum guarantees. And it was something, it was all trial and error. There was no, I had to try it enough times. I had to screw up enough times to get and understand why this worked. So minimum guarantees are something very difficult to get into contracts unless you know and understand how to ask for it in the right tonality, and you have balanced the relationship, done all these things that I've talked about. And so when the first couple times, I went 3 times specifically, went into negotiation, the first time I was like, hey, you know, what are the minimum guarantees going to be? And they're like, none. And they literally laughed on the phone. I was like, oh, okay, I guess that's not going to work. But then I ended up signing that deal because it was the only company interested, and it was my first licensing agreement. And so the second time I approached it a little differently. I asked, you know, would it be okay to get minimum guarantees built into this contract? They said, no, you know, we can't do that. And the third time, you know, I tried a variation of that. It didn't work. And so it wasn't until I really started understanding what minimum guarantees actually do. So if you actually understand contract structure and what a minimum guarantee is meant to do, it's meant to return your intellectual property. It's not meant for you to get paid tons of money every year. Once you understand that, then you can tell a story, right? How I told you, telling good stories gets you what you want. And so if your outcome of the story ends up in logical sense of you getting what you want, then you get it. And so if you know the stories to tell, then you get what you want in your agreement. So one of the best ways to get minimum guarantees set up into your contract is by asking, you say, you know, Bob's always my potential licensee that I use. So I say, Bob, you know, I'm excited to work with you guys, and I feel like you guys are the right company. But as we know in business, sometimes things don't work out as planned. And they're like, yep, you know, we understand that. And I say, you know, if things don't work out as planned with this product, would I be able to, you know, get my rights back on it? And they say, yeah, of course. You know, I mean, that totally makes sense. If we don't want launching it or whatever happens, we'd give it back. Kind of right then and there, they just agreed to a minimum performance. They just don't understand that yet because your story is not complete. And so then they'd say, well, how would you want to structure that? Or then they say, yeah, of course, we'll give it back to you. And then you come back saying, great, you know, is there something we can put in the contract that we can have that so I would get my product back? They say, yeah, of course. What are you thinking? And this is right. And this happens. This is the hoops that it just happens like this. And then you say, you know, what if we put a small amount in the contract of volume of sales that, you know, if you guys weren't even selling this much, you'd want to give it back to me anyways. That if we don't hit that, then the rights return back to me. They say, yeah, of course. And then you say, you know, what kind of volume would that be? So now they're not only agreeing to the minimum guarantees, they're setting the guarantees, where most inventors, they can't get minimum guarantees in because they don't understand how that works or what questions to ask or what stories to tell. And so once you know and understand that story to tell, and you've set up all your stuff prior, then they want to work with you. They want to make this work. And so they give you this mechanism, the contract that returns the product to you, setting up minimum guarantees. And everybody's like, well, you know, it's just such a small amount, they'd return it back to you. You dial it up, right? So they set out and say, oh, you know, 10,000 units in year 1. It's like, great. Can we do 15,000 in year 2 and 50,000 in year 3? They're like, yeah, I mean, that makes sense, right? We should be volume or scaled up to 50,000 units by year 3. It makes sense. So that's how you get minimum guarantees built into the contract. And that's the short of it of getting a, you know, a tip or a process that I use in getting my products licensed or increasing my minimum guarantees or even building in minimum guarantees. So Connor, I hope that gives you some value. It's the one aspect I'm nervous about since I have no idea what to expect or what's fair to ask. Yeah, Connor, don't be nervous about it. Email me, David@InventTribe. It's something that once you get to that point, be nervous about it. I say that like half joking again, because like I was nervous about it, but I tell all inventors, like, you can't practice live negotiation. You just can't. And that's one of the hardest things. Like inventors want to practice and like learn how to do this stuff. But I'm like, you can't practice. You just have to be in the game. And that's what I said. I had to live practice all of my terms, all my negotiation. I lost 6 licensing agreements on practice. That's hard to say now, right? Because I have, looking back, I could have 6 more products, right? I licensed 5, I could have 11 on the shelf selling. But like those were all my experiences. And now that I've compiled all those experiences and put them into trainings for people, like you don't have to go through all that pain and that hurt of losing deals now. So Connor, email me. I'd love to help you. Carol, what are good icebreakers to get them interested in your invention? Carol, thank you for the question. And the best icebreaker is having awesome marketing material, awesome emotional marketing material. And that is the thing that will break the ice. This is something that I realized, I actually think I realized this early on, is potential licensees don't care about you. And that's like a rough thing, or, hard thing for inventors to realize. But like companies, even companies that I have a relationship with, like they don't necessarily like, it's a business relationship. They want to find the value that I'm giving to them. And so like icebreakers to like buddy up, their buddying up is like having great products and great marketing material. That's what gets the ice broken and gets them calling you. And I'll give you a great example of that. There was a potential licensee, became my licensee. I'm going to foreshadow on this story. So I was calling this director of marketing. He was the one that reviewed products, and I wanted him to review one of my products, and he wouldn't answer my calls, wouldn't look at my emails. And so I was just calling the receptionist every week for about 3 months. And we got to the point where like the receptionist knew my number, call up, say, hey, is Mike in? Like, he's busy, leave a message. And we kind of had this thing going back and forth. And finally I got to the point where I was just like, all right, I got a deal for you. And this is with the receptionist. I said, the deal, I'm going to give you a deal. If you want to take it, no worries. If not, I'll keep calling you. I said, I'm going to send you my marketing material. If you review it and you feel it's valuable, can you walk down to Mike's office and show him? And if it's not, you can email me back and say, Dave, this thing is terrible. Like, I don't want to see it anymore. And then I'll leave you alone, but let me send it to you at least and have somebody in your company look at it. So I sent the receptionist. So the receptionist gave me her email. I sent it to her. And about 30 minutes later, I got an email from Mike saying, we need to talk. And so like, it was about the product. He didn't care about me. He didn't care about like, I've got 2 kids. I live in Michigan. Like those aren't icebreakers. Those aren't things that get you in the door. It's having great product, Carol, that get you in the door. And so good marketing material, and be persistent, have conversations, be a human, like talk to people. I even say, play those little games, right? Have those opportunities, because sometimes you've got to do unique things to get attention. Once you have attention, they see it as, hey, this person's bringing us a multi-million-dollar opportunity that can change the face of our business. So we're going to start to have the conversation with them. They ended up licensing that product. And so it was a bet I was willing to take because I knew the value of the product, and that the marketing material was wow, right? I sent it to a bunch of companies. All the companies came back and said, not all, a lot of the companies came back and said, this is interesting. We'd like to license it. And that's why I was willing to make that bet with that receptionist, because I knew that they would find value in the product. Carol again, hogging the mic, but I love it. Great questions. I shouldn't say hogging the mic. That sounds terrible, but no, you're sending in great questions. So thank you, Carol. Please send more. My hogging the mic comment doesn't discourage you from sending more questions. Carol, did you have to prove a concept, i.e. small sales campaign? No. There are some people out there in the licensing and business space that say that you need to do this. I've helped coach over 170 inventors to do this, and there have probably been 8 that have sales previously, maybe 10. And so there's some people tooting the horn of, we need to prove sales before we can get a licensing deal. I completely disagree. And the reason is because a lot of times inventors are not necessarily business builders. And so when I say that, going and getting a small sales campaign going takes a completely different skill set than inventing a product. So a lot of the people that are on this call are inventors, right? We create and innovate great, awesome products, but we don't know anything about manufacturing, distribution, sales campaigns, internet sales, like putting together a small internet campaign and like getting volume coming through the door is not an easy thing, right? That's like, people think you just post it on the internet and you just get sales. That's not how it works. And so it takes a completely different skill set. And so what that does, Carol, is that actually says publicly, like, hey, I invented this product and I don't have any sales. So when you're talking to a potential licensee, they're like, oh, are you selling it? Like, yeah, they ask you what your sales is. And if you don't have an impressive number, whatever that number is, then they're like, all right, thank you, but no thanks. You've gone out and proven the fact that this product's not going to work, even though it's not necessarily the product. It was the fact that you don't have the skill set of taking a product from scratch, figuring out how to get it manufactured, shipped and distributed and sold on the internet in a volume that is adequate. And so that's why I tell people, like, getting a small sales volume is not what you think it is. A lot of times you're proving the fact that you can't do this or this product is not going to work, even though the product might work. It's just your skill set is not in building a business and creating sales. And so that's why I'm so adamant about that, is like, you make this public testament, put your flag in the ground, this product's not going to work. And now you've invested sometimes 6 figures in trying to figure out or get your small sales campaign to work before a company would take it on. And here's the flip side of it too. When you have a small sales campaign, that means you have product already made, and inevitably a problem shows up. And what I mean by that is, so like, let's say ABC company, you call them and you say, hey, I've launched this. I have 100 sales in the last month. They say, hey, that sounds interesting. Let us buy 50 units and see if we can sell it. Right. So they buy 50 units for $500, and there's a hitch, right? They're not having the easiest time sell it. So they just say, Carol, thanks, but no thanks. We couldn't sell the 50 units. They're not invested, right? They've got $500 in, they didn't lose any money. They love that. But let's say you license it to them in those preliminary phases, and they have to invest $50,000 to get molds and engineering and marketing material and all of this other stuff up and running. Now they got to get their 50 G's back. They don't just like look at it and say, oh, we hit a bump in the road, so no thanks, return the product. And the other part is, there's another misconception out there that they're like, oh, you get a higher royalty rate if you've proven the concept. No, you don't. The people that I've helped license products from the level in which, they've proven sales, it's still 5 to 7%. But what they do is usually a lot of times they'll buy the molds. So like, I remember one deal, this is almost probably 10 years ago now. But they bought the molds. So it was almost a $250,000 upfront payment with it. But they were like buying all the inventory. They were buying the mold. They were essentially buying the business. And then they're paying the inventor 7% royalty moving forward. So basically they made the inventor whole on their original investments, material and molds. And then they got a 7% royalty moving forward. So it's like, that's the misconception in the market is, oh, if I've proven sales, I can get a higher royalty rate. Not really. It's kind of the same thing. And so why go through the investment and the difficulty of getting to that point when you don't necessarily get anything more out of it? So Carol, I know that there's a lot of schools of thought surrounding the proof of concept. The one thing I would do is that if you find a potential partner that says, yes, we are interested in licensing this, but we don't know the level of interest in the marketplace, then bringing it to market with them as a partner is a situation that I would look into. Because if you have somebody already lined up that's like ready to take it on, once it's kind of like hit a certain threshold, then you have a partner that you're like bouncing ideas off of, and you're not taking all the missteps that most people take when they're launching a product. I hope that answers your question. And do type in more questions. I've got 7 minutes left, so I got a hot seat the rest of them. And what I mean by hot seat means I want to like race through as much as I can so that I can get as many answers as possible before the end. Let's see here. Where can I sell my patent if I just want to sell my patent? Who should I contact? It depends on what field you're in, but most of the time you can't just sell a patent. A lot of times patents don't necessarily have value unless there's value found in it. And so you have to present it, like the whole buyout process is not, it's more fantasy than reality of like, people have this perception they see on TV, like, oh, they bought out my patent, or they've heard stories of being bought out. Well, the bought out process is like you've built a business and your patent portfolio is bought out with it. And so there's no real place to have a buyout. You want to more so license it, and then set up the contract to be bought out. Like if you want large upfront lump sum money, that is possible. You know, I've gotten 2 5-figure signing bonuses. And so you can do that if that's really what you're looking for. I guess do message in. I know you're on Facebook. I think Myro, Myro. Do message in and let us know really what is your motivation to sell the patent. That will help kind of define how it is you should move forward, because I think I talked about it earlier. Like if you figure out and understand somebody's motivation, then you can understand how to give better advice or negotiate better deals. Because when somebody says, I want to sell my patent, I want to understand why. So do message in. Connor, do you find a PPA is required for basic kids toys? Yes, when you're getting started out, Connor, do file a PPA. It's more of a air of professionalism when you're introducing you and yourself to companies that you are patent pending. So it shows that you are of the caliber to work with. Once you've pitched some products to companies in that category, sometimes you don't necessarily need the PPA because you're starting to build relationships with them. Another question. Hey, David, I heard some stories about companies pulling out after a deal is already signed. Also heard once a company pulled out even after the steel mold was made. Yes, that can happen. Can you explain and give some reasons about why this happens sometimes and what you can do to prevent this? I'll do this as quick as I can. So companies license products and then sometimes they present to buyers and buyers say, nope, we don't want to license this. This is very common in the clip strip or impulse buy category where they will license a product. And then once they've licensed it, they will present to buyers. Buyers will say no, and they will return the product to you. And so you can get a signed licensing deal in this space, a lot of times called the clip strip category. And then the company pulls out of the deal after the deal is signed because buyers aren't interested. After molds are made, that's a different story. So they've already invested sometimes $2, $5, $50, $100,000 into it. A lot of times they want to get that money back. And so if the molds have been made, and a lot of times in that exit, you can usually either buy or get somebody else to take over distribution because there's something else that happens. I've had situations where like a key player in the business passed away, like a family member, family-owned business. And so like halfway through the process, they're just like, we got to pull the plug. We don't have the manpower anymore. And so there are, this is life, right? There's crazy reasons why pandemic happens, right? And they made molds, but now market shifted. And so this does happen. One of the ways you can do to help prevent this is to get upfront money. That's one of the ways I like to do it, to kind of get the company a little bit more invested. The more they put into it, the more they look at it and say, all right, we got to get our money back out. And so they will follow through. I hope that answers your question. Mike, what does it mean when a company says maybe or interesting regarding your product? It means get on the phone and have a conversation with them. And what I mean by that is we want to find out what that means. We need to know what they mean by maybe. We need to push them over the edge from maybe to we are interested, we want to move forward. And by emailing them back, just saying, what does that mean? You're not necessarily going to get your answer. But I love getting on the phone. I love having that conversation and finding out what it is that made them respond. Because a maybe or an interesting, if you were on, Mike, on the beginning part of the webinar, I talked about when you start a negotiation or when you start having talks with the company, you're actually setting the rules of your relationship. And so this would be one of those examples of setting the rules with the relationship. When they say, hey, this is interesting, or maybe when you get on the phone and call them up and say, hey, what's up? This is David, I'm the inventor of the foamless beer pitcher. I wanted to have a conversation and see what you meant by interesting. They're like, oh, man, this inventor is serious about getting his product licensed, right? I mean, that's the statement you're making by getting on the phone and having a conversation. So do talk to them and find out what it is that will get them moving forward. And that will help you get your deal closed, or at least get it moving forward. Martin, a 5% royalty seems fair. Should you get a written contract every time or a gentleman's agreement? Depends on what category you're in, Martin. But in fishing, a gentleman's agreement is most of the time what you're going to get, except from bigger companies like Flambeau. The fishing industry is notorious for having just kind of handshake deals, because a lot of times there are guys, and I'll be honest, a lot of times when I'm helping inventors license fishing products, most of the time owners are guys that were fishermen and were like, I love fishing, I'm going to create a lure. And they start a company around it. Or they love fishing and they want to start to be a distributor, or whatever it is. And so there are a lot of guys in that category. And they go on gentlemen's agreements. And it's kind of funny because it's like, if you get them to put it in writing, that's usually enough, because they're on almost an honor system. I like having things in writing. I like having contracts. It makes things cleaner and clearer, but sometimes you're just not going to get that. And so knowing what category you're in and how it's going to work is really what's going to drive it, of you actually getting it in writing or just a gentleman's agreement. So knowing that going in, and really fishing is the category that I see most with just the gentleman's handshake of just, all right, I'll pay you 5% of sales. Sounds good. We're on a Zoom call. That's good enough. And then they go from there. So get it in writing if you can. It will help you. Paul, should I try to use my own licensing contract that my attorney will charge $2,000 to $4,000 to do, or is the company's contract fine? Company's contract is usually fine, because a lot of times if you send them your contract, they'll want to change it so close to theirs that it's usually just going to end up being theirs. Paul, there's actually a negotiating. You have more leverage. You have a better negotiating position if you are not writing the contract. That sounds crazy, but it's how it works, because if you're in second position, you actually have more leverage. I don't really have enough time in this webinar, but to give you the short of it is, when you present a contract, you have to put all the eggs in the basket, and then they get to look through that basket and say, well, we want to take this egg out. And you have to kind of sit back and say, well, that's fair, because you're the one that got to write the contract. And so they get to kind of pick and choose what they want in and out. It's the flip side of it. When they write the contract, then you're the one that's going to be essentially being able to look at the basket and say, well, let's change some of these terms. So basically, whoever has to present the contract first is at the disadvantage. So you want to be in second position in terms of getting the contract sent to you instead of you sending to them. 1, 2, 3, 4 more questions. Joel said, are there any entities that partner with inventors that the creator has working prototypes for Are there any entities that partner with inventors and that the creator has working prototypes for simple, useful gadgets, but need angel investors to fund the product's creation, manufacturing, marketing? If so, can you provide some context? And would the inventor be reasonably compensated for their part? Joel, I don't think there are. So one of the things that we are doing at Invent Tribe is we're starting up a partnership program, and it's not necessarily for funding. So if you were on the webinar earlier, we talked about funding and not necessarily needing funding for product creation, because a lot of that actually goes onto the company that you license with. The company that you license with is the one funding and making that investment. If you have angel investors coming in and putting money in, they don't have distribution, because the name of this game, and this is where the rubber actually hits the road, is distribution. You can have as much funds as you want, but if you can't distribute and sell it, it does not matter, right? You can throw $1 million in a product. I actually know a guy who did, but he didn't have distribution and sales. And so the product flopped, he lost his angel investment of $1 million. And so really what you're looking for is a partner that can get your product in front of the people that own the distribution channels. And that is a program that we have piloted for the last 1.5 years, and we are now starting to release to the public. It's going to be called our partnership program. And so if you are interested in the partnership program, do email me, David at Invent Tribe, and we'll reach out and connect and see how we can work together. Brian, hi, David. Any suggestions if the potential licensees ask you about manufacturing costs or methods? And I know little about that. Brian, I'm in the same boat with you. I know nothing about manufacturing. I mean, I've learned some stuff over the years, but when I got started, I knew absolutely nothing in terms of costs and methods. So most of the time when a company would come back and say, well, what do you think the costs are on these? I'd say, I don't have a cost on this, but I can get back to you on that. And they'd say, well, what do you think about, well, and actually this is an actual example. They said, well, what do you think about like blow molding tolerances? I said, well, let me get back to you on that. I had no idea what he was talking about. Now I know about blow molding, because as soon as he said that, I was like, I got to write this down, right? I wrote down blow molding because I didn't know what that was. And then I wrote down tolerances because I didn't know what that was either. And so then I went and learned about blow molding and tolerances. So when you get into this game, you don't necessarily need to know about that stuff. I didn't know about it because I didn't have any idea. And it was, something that I learned along the way, because I was presenting good products to companies that had distribution chains that could sell. And so they were less interested in my knowledge of manufacturing and more interested in my product innovations that could change the future of their company. And so, Brian, don't look at as your shortcoming. I have people that they look at me and they're like thinking I have a design background or any type of skills in CAD or manufacturing. No, I don't. I don't know anything about that stuff. And you don't necessarily need it. I've learned some stuff. I've learned enough over the years to have conversations about it. But technical skills, actually this week, I had a company that was like, oh, are we doing like an ABS plastic? But they started going on and on and on. I was like, honestly, this is where my knowledge of this stuff ends. And I would need to know more research. And they're like, oh, that's fine. You don't need to. We got it from here. I was like, all right, cool. And that was the end of manufacturing conversation. And we're moving forward with the deal. So Brian, you don't need to know it all. Just know about your product and the benefit and value that it brings to the end customer, and you can license products. Michelle, do you need a prototype of the product you are trying to license? Yes and no. There's two layers of thoughts, or two groups of thoughts on that. I have licensed products without prototypes. I have had students license products without prototypes. But I will say companies like you to have prototypes that are functional. A lot of times I've gotten into deals where companies are like, hey, we love this concept, but we need a functional prototype because it's a concept. And so I was like, okay, then I got to figure that out. And so Michelle, what I do is, if it's a difficult product to prototype, I will do a 3D rendering of it. or a 3D animation. These are the things that will show how the product works and how the value is added, right? Remember I talked about conveying emotional benefits, getting people excited emotionally about your product, right? And so then boom, once you convey emotion, get somebody excited about it, they're going to reach out and say, Michelle, this is interesting. We need to talk more. And in that conversation, it'll come out that they need a prototype. Sweet. Now, once you have companies interested in the benefit that you're conveying, all right, you might want to spend some money on a prototype, but that's through conversation. I see inventors haphazardly investing in very expensive prototypes and very expensive patents without having interest. I go get interest first. I even get deals first before I start spending big money. Like I get companies saying, we'll pay you 5% if you can figure out X, which is like a prototype or how to patent it. That's where I get to. And so I don't waste my time with prototypes that are too difficult before I get interest. So I hope that helps, Michelle. Carol, I've got 2 more questions and then we're going to end it for tonight. What do you think about patent brokers? Why do most coaches don't like them? Are they worth asking? Are they worth working with? If so, any particular company you'd recommend? Carol, great question. I could go like a little bit on that, but so I don't not like patent brokers. And I think one of the reasons that there's this like patent broker coach fight is that, or like agent or it's in the way. So like coaches get paid for their service of like showing and teaching. And so patent brokers look at that and they say, they don't need to be shown how to do things. They can just give it to us and we get a percentage. And so then coaches and teachers look at the patent brokers and say, well, patent brokers shouldn't be taking a percentage of your product because I can teach them how to do it themselves, right? And that's where that like conflict is like coaches think patent brokers or agents are taking money from inventors in a way that they shouldn't because they're getting a percentage of their deal where like, and then patent brokers are the other side. They're like, you shouldn't charge for education because like you should be just giving that away for free and then charging a percentage on the back end. So it's like, that's where the conflict comes from. But I think patent brokers and coaches have their spaces, right? Because some inventors, they want to learn how to do it themselves, right? Do it themselves. Inventors are very usually like self-sufficient individuals and like to do things themselves. And so they hire a coach to help them through the process, where patent brokers are there to get into places that inventors can't. And so I don't necessarily have a patent broker that I can recommend because I don't use them, right? I was the self-sufficient type. I wanted to do it myself. I wanted to have control. I wanted to negotiate my own deals. I wanted to build my own relationships with companies so I could pitch more products and not have a patent broker between me and them. Right. And so that's why I don't have any I can recommend because I always did it myself. And I coach and help inventors in terms of education because that's who I was and that's how I help. So Carol, I hope that helps. Russell, I have a large company that strung me along and now I'm thinking they're trying to work around my IP. My patent is very broad and I believe a good law firm would take my case. My question, should I try to beat them to the market? I have a shower product, but the IP crosses over 2 life cycles of many new innovations. Russell, that is a difficult question to answer because there's so many different subtleties. In terms of beat them to market, are you looking at venturing it yourself? If you're looking at venturing it yourself, then that might be a difficult road. And so, and beating an established company to market, you don't necessarily need to beat an established company to market. One way to get a company from not working around you is, and like when you say strung along, I want to let you know, like I've coached inventors that have been in a deal, like negotiating a deal for 3 years. So like, and they weren't getting strung along. It's just, that's how long it takes. And so there's a misperception on how long companies actually take. Like a normal negotiation, like if you started talking to them, like last year this time, I mean, that's still in the realm of typical in terms of how long it takes to negotiate and bring a deal together. So if you want to get more detailed send me an email at David@InventTribe, and we can kind of talk through that. But like one great way I can deter companies from doing a workaround is like I'll email them and say, hey, I'm wondering where we're at on the project. How are we moving forward? I wanted to share some more intellectual property that I've filed. And they're like, oh, we got more IP to work around that we don't know about. And that'll kind of stop them dead in their tracks to get them to not be able to move forward. And so I hope that helped. Michael said, thanks for the advice. Dave, talk to you soon. I appreciate everybody coming on the webinar. I know we went over, but I feel like we got a lot of great questions. Edgar said, what's your email and a good time to reach you? Send me an email at David@InventTribe and we can connect from there. To let everybody know, we are doing a live webinar on Sunday. It is Sunday the 21st at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or EDT, Eastern Daylight Time. And we're covering the 5 steps, right? I talked about the 5 steps of licensing your product, and I'm going to a whole hour breaking down those 5 steps and actually how to perform them. And so if you're interested in licensing your own product, do reach out. We'll put a link in the chat for how to sign up for that webinar, because we'd love to have you in, teach you the 5 steps of getting in. And so that is Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 5 Pacific, teaching the 5 steps of licensing. So do sign up for that webinar. Love to see you there. If anybody has any further questions or want to connect, David@InventTribe. And I'll be able to reach out to you specifically, and we can go from there. So I do appreciate everybody spending an hour and 13 minutes with us today to learn more about licensing, talk about licensing. I love the questions tonight. And so do send any questions and have a wonderful night, day, whatever time it is that you actually catch this, because I know that is live and it'll be out there on the internet recirculating. So thank you so much and have a good